Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We are live on August 15th at 2 p.m. EST. Today's webinar is Fundamentals of Developing a Tribal Nonprofit Part 3. I will be submitting the recordings for Part 1 and Part 2 in the chat box momentarily. For those of you who don't already know, Kathita means learning in Creek. In that respect, today we'll be learning about Fundamentals of Developing a Tribal Nonprofit Part 3. My name is Alyssa Atkins, and I will be your webinar facilitator today. I am the Training and Development Coordinator for the Native Learning Center. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started. This webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. Before we get started, I wanted to familiarize you with some of the features available and how the environment works. If you look at the top of your screen, you will see an icon of either a person with their hand raised or just a hand. With that icon, you can either raise hand, agree, disagree, or step away. Now your screen should look similar to this graphic here. To the bottom left, you will see a box that says Files. Here you will find today's presentation, as well as all the handouts. Please feel free to download a copy for yourself. Simply click the item you would like to download, then click the arrow pointing downwards to download and save onto your device. Once the item is downloaded, it should appear in your device's download section. The second box labeled Web Links is where you will find our survey about today's webinar, along with any other links that will be seen throughout today's presentation. Finally, to the right of the screen, we have a chat box available. This is how you will communicate with the instructor and NLC staff. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to interact by using the chat box. Simply type your message and hit enter or click that up arrow icon button to submit. We do encourage class participation, so please feel free to write in those questions or comments. Tech support issues should also be submitted here. Note that most can be solved by exiting and re-entering the meeting room. Also, if you check at the top of your screen, please make sure that the speaker button is highlighted in green. If you all of a sudden cannot hear, just make sure that that button is still selected on and green. Let's all try our chat box together now by typing in your name, where you're joining us from, and your tribal affiliation. And with that being said, it is a great pleasure that I introduce Vince Franco.
All right. Hey, thanks for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Welcome to part 3 of building and maintaining a successful tribal nonprofit organization. Juliet 305, as in area code 305, Miami-Dade County 305. If so, I am right. Let me see what you have to say here. Pitbull. Yeah, exactly, Mr. 305. Yeah, I'm in 561, which is just 2 counties up the road, up in Palm Beach County. So hang in there. The weather, for those of you who don't know, the weather is brutal here in Southeast Florida. So we're all doing our best to try to get through all this. And hopefully there'll be a break in the near future. Anyway, usually this time of the year and this time of the day, there's usually a thunderstorm or something. And I'm saying something like, bear with me because I might lose power or something like that. That's not the case now. It's just brutally hot and dry, very unusual. But anyway, we're going to get into the program. We've got a lot of stuff to cover here. Those of you, I recognize a lot of names. Those of you that were with me the prior 2 weeks, we covered a lot of territory. Let me see if I can jump ahead. Here we go. Let me just do a quick review for those who were with me. And those of you that might be new, you can always go back and, as Elisa said, you can download part 1 and part 2 and listen to them. I would encourage you to do that if this is your first session with me. In part 1, top left of your screen there, we went over some fundamentals, went over some resource materials, some QR codes to take you to different sites that are excellent, I think, for information for groups that want to move through the process for the ultimate goal of becoming a nonprofit organization. And I talked about the purpose, the vision, and the mission of starting a group moving in the right direction. I can't call you an organization, can't call you, certainly can't call you a nonprofit if you haven't gone through these preliminary steps yet or incorporated or anything like that, because those are all processes that we talked about in the first session. Beyond the purpose, vision, and mission, we got into your organizational name, the name of the organization, and how to lock in that name with the state that you're applying for. Juliet and I are in the state of Florida. Florida is a very business-friendly state. It's got a lot of things going for it in that regard. It's easy to start a nonprofit. It's easy to start a nonprofit. I've done both in the state of Florida, a couple of them in the state of Florida, currently an LLC on the profit side and then a nonprofit as well on that side of the equation. And it's easy to do, but there are costs that are involved with it. And then we also talked about the employer identification number, which is through the IRS. That's a federal identification process that needs to be done regardless of the name. Even if you're not going to be an employer or have employees, you really, my opinion is you really need to apply for what's called an EIN number, because it streamlines the process of becoming incorporated and then eventually becoming a nonprofit, because you're going to go right back to the IRS for your nonprofit determination. So you need to have that EIN number, even if you have, like me, even if you have no plans of hiring part-time or full-time employees, you want that EIN number to follow you through the process and help streamline the process as well for getting to that nonprofit goal and beyond that. Okay, we talked about articles of incorporation. Keep in mind that you were with me. We talked about filing the articles. There's usually a template that you can use, and the state of Florida has one, and all other states have a template that you can complete. And once you do that and complete all the 7 or 8 questions that are on that articles of incorporation, and you get the acknowledgement back from the state, and remember, if you were with me, I encouraged you to get a certified copy of the approval by the state, which is suitable for framing. It's also something you want to keep hard copy and electronic version of in your portfolio of important papers. You just don't want to send off your articles and get an email back. You want to get the your actual articles received back, stamped, approved, signed, notarized, whatever, by the state, so you have that in your important records, your name acknowledgement, your articles. And once you get acknowledgement from the state that your articles have improved, you are incorporated. You are now not just an entity, which is what your name, registering your name makes you an entity in the state of Florida, an entity, but an entity could be a sole proprietor, it could be a partnership. Once you submit articles of incorporation, you are now a legal entity recognized in the state of Florida, whatever, is a legal entity. And from that point forward, all the assets, all the income and all the assets of the incorporated entity, the legal entity, now are being separated, which is, in my opinion, a very important and calculated, strategic, and good move to do. You want to protect your personal assets, your car, your home, your boat, any other assets that you might have in your name and or your spouse's name. You want to protect those assets from, hold on, I just lost the picture. My screen just went, as they say, it faded to black. Here we go, I'm back. You want to protect your personal assets from the company's assets. And the only way to really do that is to incorporate your business. You can do it as a for-profit and you can do it as a nonprofit. I've gone both directions. I recommend that you do it. You incorporate, you get that document back, then you are a legally and recognized incorporated entity in the state that you want to pursue nonprofit status. And it's a good move tax wise, and it's a good move legally. It's a good business move, to have that recognition. And again, that's going to follow you all the way through the process. So articles of incorporation. Then we talked about the internal. Now we turned internally and talked about creating bylaws. You're not a nonprofit yet, but you need to establish bylaws, which kind of spins off your articles, but your bylaws is kind of your roadmap. It's kind of your Bible. It's kind of your go-to for internal controls, policies, and procedures. You don't want to change your articles, but your bylaws you can change. I don't recommend doing it often, but you have to change your bylaws as your organization grows. That makes sense, right? So bylaws came next, and then we talked about general liability insurance. You're going to need to have that. It comes with a cost. I'm going to estimate, for my for-profit, it was around $500 a year. Not crazy expensive. So I'm going to say $500 to $800 a year to get good, minimal, but comprehensive liability insurance. And general liability insurance is just that. It covers the liability of the corporation, and that's what you want. It protects the future assets and the decisions that are being made by your leadership, by your board of directors. Actually, that's a little bit of a spin-off. When I say the decisions, that's usually referred to E&O, errors and omissions. That can be an add-on to your general liability. Especially important, the general liability, if you're going to have a bricks and mortar location where you're going to have people in and out, down the road. Right now, if you don't have a physical facility, I still recommend that you get general liability insurance, and you're going to need that to qualify for other things anyway. You're going to have to show that you have insurance for the organization, and then add on, at least initially with the E&O, errors and omission. I think that comes as a rider, if I'm not mistaken. If there's any insurance people in the group, correct me if I'm wrong, but the E&O is, I think, a rider to general liability insurance, or if it is a separate policy, it's inexpensive. Really, that type of thing. It's kind of a white collar type of things. So if you're sued, this is down the road, and for more of an established quote unquote nonprofit, they're making decisions like, for example, giving the recruiting monies and contributions and grants to give scholarships to some organization, and in the decision they choose some people and not choose others. And let's say that one of those not choosed others sues the organization for not being selected. It seems trivial and kind of crazy, but it happens. This is where the errors and omissions comes into play to help recover any costs that you incur for the decisions made by the board, whether good or bad or misinterpreted or crazy, type of stuff like that. We live in a society where everybody sues everything for anything. That coffee's too hot, or whatever. So you got to protect yourself. You want to protect the decisions of your leadership as they progress in the program and as your organization matures. Okay, so we talked about insurance. Then last week we got into we turned inside, so to speak, and we looked at internal operations, operating versus governance. First you're going to be doing everything, but as the organization grows, your leadership, your board of commissioners, board of directors, which is a requirement for nonprofits, are going to be making decisions and hopefully transitioning as the organization grows from operating hands-on to less hands-on, to more governance, policies and procedures, internal controls, decisions, and not so much actually doing it, especially as your organization brings on staff and grows, which is a hopeful situation. It's a rite of passage for all small nonprofits, progressing, maturing, and growing. And then we talked about effective meetings, dysfunctional versus functional, things that you should do and shouldn't do, organizational traits of your board of directors, the quality we talked about. Eleanor Rigby, my benchmark of the very, everything that a potential board member, every quality, every trait that a board member should have. Talked about that in leadership characteristics. Now, today, part 3 of 4, we're going to get into more organizational functions, specifically about fundraising. Very, you might not know this, but when we get into session 4, next week, next Tuesday, I'm going to talk about the very last section of the nonprofit, moving forward with this nonprofit, and that is the actual application and determination of the IRS. I can tell you right now, whether you do the long form or the short form, and we'll get into that next week, you're going to have to tell the IRS what your fundraising plan is. They want to know that you are not just a hobby, that you are not just a group of people who went through the motion of being incorporated, and that you're serious in trying to create sustainability and capacity building. And that's what fundraising shows the IRS, that you have the wherewithal, the capacity, the willingness, and the sustainability. So you have to, your board of commissioners, your leadership's going to have to give some serious thought to how you're going to fund your organization as it moves through the process, or at least be able to describe it, even though you can't take donations now. You're not a nonprofit. You can't take contributions yet. You need to have a fundraising plan in place. And it doesn't have to be, a 67-page narrative, but it has to be thought out. And that's what I'm going to try to do today, is give you some insight on mechanisms or processes that you could put in place to create revenue streams, potential and real revenue streams for your soon-to-be nonprofit. And we'll get into that. Searching for grants, for example. That's what I'm going to get into in a few minutes. Federal type grants from federal agencies, also foundations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on the private side, and also corporate on the private side as well. And then Indian-centric community groups out there that I want to bring to your attention. And then lastly, soliciting donations, planned giving, contributions, and all of those things that need to be probably included in your fundraising. I like to call it like a multimedia approach to fundraising. We don't want to put all our eggs in one basket, to use another metaphor. We want to have, here's another metaphor, we want to have a very mixed portfolio of different options that we can pursue for fundraising the program. So let's really get into it here. Now, I got a lot to share with you. So let's get into fundraising consideration. A couple housekeeping things here first. Fundraising considerations. To actually get the tax, you're not eligible for tax benefits yet. Even though you might be a legally recognized entity, you're not tax exempt yet. You don't have 501c3 status yet. That's what we're talking about. You're pursuing that. It says you have to wait until incorporation, or beyond incorporation. Incorporation, as I mentioned, starts at the state level with articles. We're going beyond that. It's finalized in your state, and you have the letter of the 501c3. That's going to come from the IRS. We're not there yet. So contributions and the tax benefits that come with them from individuals and companies to you, you cannot take advantage of yet from a tax standpoint. Nor can you give monies to anyone yet if you don't have the 501c3 nonprofit determination. You cannot provide tax benefit donations yet. That's the goal of becoming a nonprofit, to get to that level. You can receive money, it just won't have tax exemption benefits with it, unless you are one of those lucky few groups that someone wants to give a contribution, or some organization wants to give you money and take advantage of the tax benefits. That's fine. They can't give it to you directly, but they might be able to, with some creative thinking here, be able to give you a contribution through another nonprofit. So bear with me here. This is called a surrogate process where an individual or a corporation wants to give money to you, but you're not there yet. You don't have 501c3 status yet, so the tax exemption benefits are not there. So they give the contribution to an intermediary, another nonprofit, a legitimate nonprofit, where it's incubated, so to speak, for until you're ready, and then comes over to you so you can take advantage of the tax benefits. That's a possibility, but that's getting very, very complicated. The best rule of thumb is just to hold off, wait, and go to training programs like this so you can learn how to expedite the process as quickly as possible, become a legitimately recognized 501c3, and then start taking your donations and contributions from outsiders, and perhaps even passing some of that money through as donations to other charitable causes. But we'll get to that. So fundraising considerations. Let's go to the next one. Your organization wishes to apply for grants. That's one, a federal grant. Let's start with the federal grants. Those federal agencies, that could be a very good possibility of revenue streaming for you to create. But how do you go about it? That's what we're going to talk about here. It says your organization wishes to apply for grants. Keep in mind that funders, whether they're corporations or Bill and Melinda Gates foundations or other government agencies, always require, 99 times out of 100, what they recognize is 501c3 charitable nonprofit status. That's just what that's just the way it is. There are other nonprofit classifications by the IRS for different groups, but what's most readily recognized in the philanthropic community is the 501c3 status. So that's what we're talking about here. That's what we're going for. It says, in addition to tax exemption, contribution from grants, there are other benefits of 501c3. Well, yeah, tax exemption is the big one, right? But let's get back to funding grant opportunities, searching for grants. And let's start at the top here. Let's go looking at federal grant opportunities, the big league stuff, from the federal agencies, Department of Labor, Department of Energy, HUD, EPA, Health and Human Services, the big agencies. If you haven't heard of it, I would recommend that you check out grants.gov. All right, you can go to it right now. There's the QR code for it if you want. In fact, I'm going to check it out to make sure that this link is live. So while I'm talking to you, I'm going to pull up my phone and my camera, click on that QR code, and see where it takes me right to the homepage of grants.gov, which is where you want to be. Grants.gov is the federal government's repository of all the federal grants. So when you go to grants.gov, this is what you should see. And I see it right now on my phone, and you're seeing it live here in this screenshot that was taken literally off of grants.gov. And you can see the two arrows, what color is that? Orangey, yellow, two arrows pointing to two very important things. One on the top left of your screen is pointing downward towards what's called search grants. So that's one way that you can navigate through grants.gov. If you're looking for federal grant opportunities, you can click on that link there and it'll take you somewhere. And I'm going to show you what it looks like in a second. But I want to talk about the top right. It says, if I can read it, register. This is where you want to consider actually creating a profile on grants.gov. And the reason I strongly recommend doing that, if you're going to really take serious looking for federal grant opportunities, I recommend that you register your name, your organization into grants.gov and create a profile. And I'll show you how you can create filters in there to look for grant opportunities that are more in line, hopefully, with what you're trying to accomplish, because grants.gov has thousands and thousands and thousands of grant opportunities. And if you use just the search grant icon that I showed you on the left with that arrow, you can use it, but you'll be inundated with and probably overwhelmed with the amount of options you have. So you want to try to streamline your process. So let's look at it a little bit and see if I can explain how to create filters. All right, that arrow is showing again, highlighting search grants. And once you click on it, like I have here, this screenshot shows what you're going to. In the middle of the screenshot with the, with all that verbiage there, the blue column, the blue highlighted column, and then all those lines there, those are just one page out of probably 500 or more of grant opportunities from federal agencies. See what I mean? It's just page after page after page. And this page is not really filtered in a way. It's kind of aggregate information. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just one after another after another. And it might be in date sequence, but that's about it. So you want to use the left side of the column there where it says search grant. And you can see that column underneath it. And let me see if I can get it a little closer here. I think there we go. Let me go back. What I'm showing you is the column on the left, just blown up a little bit. This is where you can use the search grant to create filters on the fly. You can go in today and do this and create a filter on the spot and try to look for example, grants from IHS or any, or Department of Labor. You could create that right here and look at. I'm suggesting that you go back a couple slides and you register and create a profile. And what'll happen, like I get, every week, no, I'll take that back. Every weekday, I get a list of grant opportunities that fall into the parameters of my filter. And every single workday, I get a notice from grants.gov on at least 6 or 7 grant opportunities, federal grant opportunities from different agencies. And it allowed me to zero down and narrow my selection from a shotgun down to a rifle shot, of grant on, and I still get 5 or 6 every day. So, but it helps streamline the process from thousands down to tens, if that makes sense. So here, what you're seeing on the screen is a search mechanism, and it's also the filter mechanism too. You can create a long-term profile. You have different ways of searching. You're navigating through. You can search by top left column on the left, top left. You can search by keyword. You can search also by funding opportunity number, which is every federal grant has that tracking number, has a federal opportunity number, or you can search by another data reference, which is called a CFDA number. It's usually a 2-digit number and a dot and then 3 digits. Like, for example, 93.638, which is the grant that a lot of tribes apply for. Typically, just referred to as a 638 grant, but that's the CFDA number. So you can do that. If you know what the CFDA number is, you can look. Or you can scan down I'm still on the left column, but moving down and then over to the right. There are different filters there. You can see opportunity status, open or closed. Below that, you can get into cooperative agreements or grants. There are other options there, but those are the 2 most common. You've got federal grants, and then you have cooperative agreements. Cooperative agreements are grants, but have more requirements from the federal agency. Okay, so you have those options. Then as you move down, you can see there at the very bottom left, you can also put indicators down there. If you're a city government, if you're a county government, if you're a for-profit organization, underneath that it got cut off, but there is nonprofit, which is where you want to be, right? You would mark that one for sure. Then underneath that are some other categories, tribal governments that have federal recognition. That's one of them. And another one is tribal governments without federal recognition. And there are some tribes out there that are in that status. All right. On the right side, you get the categories, arts, agriculture, education, business, community, and so on. And then below that, you got the different federal agencies, all of them, Department of Labor, energy, commerce, defense, education. You see, all of those together, if you don't create filters, you'd be inundated. You'd get thousands of them, and they wouldn't make any sense. And 99.99% would not have any attraction for you, and they would be useless. You'd be wasting your time. That's why I strongly recommend that if you're going to be looking for federal grant opportunities, which is a good idea, use the filters in grants.gov to create your profile and streamline the process. This is just more screenshots of showing the filtering process. All right. But here, now I've chosen one just for an example. I don't know, just an example of one. This one happens to be Historic Preservation Grant Funds for Unrepresented Communities, Department of Interior, National Park Service. So I selected one, and this is what's called the synopsis. It's kind of a bird's eye view. It's 1 or 2 pages, and it gives all the pertinent information at a glance that you would want to, kind of make an educated decision whether to take it to the next step. And the next step would be, to download all the information and start at least getting your ducks in a row to, at some point, start the application process. But the middle of the screen there gives all the vital statistics, all the information you would need. Its name, its CFDA number. If it's a grant or cooperative agreement, does it have a match? Is there a requirement for matching there or not? And this one, it says no, bottom left. There's no matching. Okay, great. Also, just above it, a couple lines above that, no, you've got the CFDA number on the bottom left, 15.9904, okay? And just above that, it says expected number of awards. Very critical piece of information. How many of these federal awards are going to be given? 12. That's not a lot. All right, so let's go over to the right side and take a look at that column of information. But I'm going to work from the right bottom up. Very bottom right says the minimum. It's called the amount floor. The minimum amount that you could receive is $15,000. Now, for some tribes, some organizations, that's a lot of money. For some, it's not a lot of money, and it might not be worth their time to pursue because it's such a low dollar amount. But just above it, it tells you the maximum amount, $50,000. And above that, it gives the total funding, which is $500,000. So $500,000 total purse, as they say in boxing and gambling and all that stuff. The total amount of award is $500,000. They're going to get 12 awards from $15,000 to $50,000. Now, this was a little bit old. It said there's a deadline of 2018. Disregard that. But the date that it is due is important. Like a lot of organizations, you need to give yourself ample time. So if there's only a 30 or 45-day turnaround to submit this application, you got to give some thought to it. Is that enough time to complete it? And think backwards. What do you need? If you're a tribal entity, even if you're a want-to-be nonprofit, like a housing authority that has a TDHE, that has an independent board of directors, wants to be a nonprofit, regardless, you're going to probably need to have a tribal resolution, and that takes time. With the Seminole tribe, there's a process that it takes time to get a resolution. It's got to be drafted. It's got to have legal review. It's got to get to the tribal secretary to get on the agenda. And, with a hope and a prayer that the tribe meets, especially in the summer months, right? June, July, and August, it's kind of a 50-50 gamble if the council's going to meet. Sometimes they don't in the summer months. So anyway, you've got all those logistics. And do you need letters of support? And who's going to write the narrative? Things we're really not going to get into today. That's more grant writing. That's a whole separate training program. But hopefully you see what I mean. And this is just another way to shop, so to speak, for grant opportunities. Here's the second page of the synopsis, more detail. Here you can see who's eligible to apply. See that long list in the middle of the page? You're going to be competing against city and county governments, against state governments, also against Native American tribal governments that are federally approved, and so on. This, just by looking at those couple pieces of information, I would probably pass on this one unless we really needed it, because this is low dollar volume and very, very competitive. You got a lot of different entities that are eligible to pursue the grant, and it's not a big amount of money. So I don't know about it. But if you were interested, you can take it to the next level, and you can download. Did I skip ahead? Probably. There we go. You can download the package. I'm still on the synopsis thing here, but it gives me an option. Now, if I like what I see, I can download the application and all of its components, which I recommend. Don't ever, ever, ever try to complete a grant application, especially a federal grant application, online at one sitting. To compose a narrative and to put your budget together and get all your support letters and maybe that resolution. You can't do that in one sitting. So what you got to do is download everything. You've got to download it to your laptop, download it to your work desk, print it out if you need to, so that you can analyze it. You can look at what's referred to as the NOFA or NOFO, Notice of Funding Availability, which gives you a description of all the moving parts of the grant, everything you have to do. You want to read through that, and this is how you do it. If you're interested in federal funding, you use grants.gov to help find these opportunities. Then once you find them through your filtering process, then you can start looking at them. If you see something you like, you download it, and then you start your review process. Hopefully giving yourself plenty of time and not rushing into it with a 30 or 40 or even a 60-day deadline, because it's just not enough time to put it all together. Trust me. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been burned initially when first starting this by making all those mistakes. Picking something that had a short turnaround time and not being able to get all those documents, not understanding the notice of funding availability thoroughly, not calling upon additional resources to help, and made all the mistakes. And I hate to see you do that. But this is a great way. If you're going to pursue federal grant opportunities, this is the way to do it. And just more information on the documents. This one to the bottom left tells you exactly the documents that need to be completed and submitted. And on the right, it says download instructions. Instructions are the NOFA or NOFO, Notice of Funding Availability, Notice of Funding Opportunity, interchangeable. That's what you want to download. That's what you want to take the time to read thoroughly before you go into motion and put it in motion and actually move towards completing this process. And if you are going to complete the process, there is the standard forms. Here's one of them, the standard application. It's referred to as SF 424, standard form 424, which is the application for federal assistance. You can go to the QR code there. It should take you straight to that application. It is a standard form used for all federal grants. You can download it at any time. You can go ahead and start preliminarily, literally print it out if you wish to. Oh, it's a fillable PDF, so you can fill up, download it and fill it out and have it. Save yourself some time, because it's kind of it's a uniform application that you're going to use for every federal grant. The only thing that, of course, that would change is the name of the grant and your budget, which is on subsequent pages here. Here you get into a description. There's only 3 pages to it. This is page 2, where you describe the program, and then page 3, middle of the page, is your budget. That's going to change from grant to grant, of course. Top left and top right are your congressional districts. So you need to know that kind of stuff too. There's 2 questions, because they're going to ask you where your corporate location is and what is the congressional district that you're in, that your corporate organization or home base is located. And then to the right, if you have a different location for the program or project that you're implementing in a different county, in a different state, whatever, you might be in a different congressional area and you have to indicate that. But those are things you might have to research. And the rest of it is acknowledgement, who is the point person, the contact person, etc. So I would, you might want to download this and have it. But from this point, all the other documents are going to be unique to the federal grant, with the exception of, believe it or not, if you've never done this before, lobbying. There's going to be a form. If I go back here, 2 slides, there it was. Let me look closely. I don't see it on the bottom left there. I see the SF 424. I see the assurance of non-construction programs and budget, but I don't see, but it's going to be included. Lobbying, I don't have it here, but all federal applications are going to ask you to complete what's called an anti-lobbying form, which is going to be included like this standard form you see on the screen, because basically the regulations say you cannot use federal funds to influence legislation, to influence legislators, to lobby. You cannot do that. You cannot use federal funds, and you have to be careful about that, especially if you're a tribal entity and you have council running, the council's running, and you want to use funds from your federal program to support a candidate. You can't do that. You can't use federal funds for any type of legislative, national, state, regional, tribal. You can't use the federal funds for that. So you have to sign off on it saying, we're not going to do that. It's just one of the regulations. Okay, that's it for federal grants using grants.gov. It's the online portal for grant opportunities. So Juliet, if you have a question, go ahead and put it in, or a comment or a concern. I saw you starting to type and then pull back. But let's move on to the second one, in fundraising on the private side. We talked about the public side, which is the federal agencies, right? But let's look on the private side, which includes 3 categories, 3 opportunities: foundation grants, corporate, and community. Or in my case, what I'm going to be talking here is native-centric community organizations that provide funding. So let me go through them really quickly, give a description of each one of them, okay, as we approach halfway through our program here. All right, I'm going to be talking about the left side of the screen here. Top left, I mentioned Bill and Melinda Gates a couple times. Even though they're not married, their foundation still thrives. It's one of the probably the largest foundation in the world. Gerrymandering in between 2 members of Congress by feet and inches. Really? That's crazy. Gerrymandering is the changing of congressional districts, which can be a nightmare. You're absolutely right. The difference between feet and inches, yeah, I believe that. I believe all of that. Okay, Bill and Melinda Gates is just one of several. Going to get into that in a minute. Walmart and many, many, many other corporate entities represents just that, the corporate philanthropic community. Another great opportunity for funding. And then the bottom one, First Nations development, First Nations OBISTA. We're talking now about community, native-centric community organizations. On the right of your screen is a little blurb top right on what's called Candid, or candid.org, which used to be the foundationcenter.org. In fact, you can still go to the foundationcenter.org and it'll redirect you to now what's called Candid. That's where you go. In fact, let's check that QR code right now. Let's see if it works. Pull up my phone and camera. It should take me to candid.org, and it did. Is it loading? All right. Anyway, that www.candid.org. You could use the URL or you can use the QR code if it takes you there. That is on the private side. That's like grants.gov, but on the private side. It's the repository of a lot of private sector grants. You're going to find Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and all of them in there. You're going to find the corporate entities in there as well. In fact, Let's take a look. Foundations. I mentioned Bill and Melinda Gates like 17 times already, but there are others out there. Here are some of the top ones, and some of them have a Native-centric focus for nonprofit. Or again, keep in mind, you got to be a nonprofit. So this is what we're leading towards, creating fundraising opportunities for our nonprofits. But I want you to be able to include this type of stuff, not just the bake sale that you're going to do, but or the garage sale or something bigger than that, heavy equipment or whatever it might be, but other approaches to fundraising. Now, fundraising on the private side from real organizations that are out there, like the Ford Foundation, like the cereal makers up in Battle Creek, believe it or not, Kellogg Foundation. The cereal makers have a Native American children in Michigan focus. So if you're located in Michigan, like some of our tribes are, or you plan to do business up there as a nonprofit, then you might want to reach out to the folks at the Kellogg Foundation, Archibald and Edith Bush Foundation. The middle one there, Robert, I'm sure we've all heard, seen it on TV because they're huge sponsors. They get a lot of press, they're big social media. Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, mostly on the medical side of the equation and health, substance abuse in Native American communities. So we've got the meth issues, we've got the opioid issues there. So if that's an area of concern, give the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation some thought. Northeastern area, a lot of the foundations, not all of them, a lot of them are Pacific Northwest. I don't know what it is, but it must be very friendly up there for creating foundations like Bill and Melinda Gates out of the Seattle area. Same thing with the Northwest Area Foundation. I don't know about Pew Charitable Trust. I'm not sure where they're located, but that's another very common one, right? I hear that all the time, especially on public TV. We hear about the Pew Charitable Trust. Leman Foundation, I mentioned Bill and Melinda Gates now too many times, and then the Paul G. Allen. You can go to candid.org, aka the foundationcenter.org, and you can see all of them there. And just like grants.gov, you can navigate through, you can create a profile, you can shop for different funders if you know who they are, or for different categories. And what makes this unique is with Candid, with the foundationcenter.org, you can actually go in, dig deep, drill down, and look at any of these organizations' tax returns. So why would you want to go look at a tax return if you had the time and willingness to do that kind of research? Well, going in, just like our tax returns, it tells you where your money came from and where your money's going, right? With corporate entity or with foundations and with corporate entities coming up, you want to find out where they were sending their donations to, how much, and what causes. And that's what you can gain from looking at their tax returns. So that is good to know. Foundations are nonprofits. They're usually 501c6, which is a different IRS classification with different tax obligations, different tax burdens. If you're thinking of becoming a foundation, I recommend not doing it. Do not pursue the path of a foundation. The tax implications are much more rigid, much more demanding than they are with the 501c3. So stick with the 501c charitable 501c3, moving in that direction, and you'll be just fine. You won't have nearly the tax obligation and tax burden that foundation does, C6. All right. Generates income through investments of their donors. Second bullet, just distribution, the bulk of their investment income, usually founded by an individual or family, like the Kellogg Group. Okay, first two bullets, very, very important. The money that they receive, 95% of foundation funding is what's called donor driven. That means the donors contribute to the foundation and usually tell the foundation where they want their money to go towards. Is it, for just hypothetically, is it going to be for fourth year nursing students in Nebraska? That could be it. So money that, it's donor driven. And then the top bullet says the bulk of their generate income through their investments, and they're obligated to take their investment income and spend up to 95% of it. So we're talking about a lot of restrictions from an operational standpoint of foundations. But for you, I would strongly recommend that you start taking a look at foundation funding. Go to candid.org, see if something there is of interest. Look at some of these foundations and drill down a little bit and see if there's something that is of interest to your potential nonprofit, right? You've got nothing to lose. And it adds to your fundraising portfolio that you're looking at federal funding through grants.gov and navigating through it. Now you're also supplementing your fundraising by looking through on the private side, looking at foundations and taking it to the next step and looking at corporate entities. You can also look into corporate entities through candid.org, as I mentioned with the foundations, right? You can look at pure corporate entities. This is where you find your Walmarts and your JP Morgans and your GEs and Wells Fargo, UPS. They're all not all of them, but a lot of them, a lot of corporate entities have what's called a philanthropic focus. When it comes down to it, and I'm not trying to be facetious here, but you need to understand the way that corporate entities work. They think differently than community organizations. They think differently than you and I. They certainly think different than nonprofit organizations. Look at those arrows at the top right. Corporate funding, and again, not being facetious here, corporate funding is an expression of corporate responsibility. Their responsibility, not yours. Second bullet, it is a channel for the distribution of their corporation's profits to a nonprofit organization. And the bottom one, most importantly, it is an opportunity from them, for the corporation, to further their mission, their branding, their citizenship, not necessarily yours. And we need to keep that in mind, that we've got all these corporations out there, right? You might have the best idea in the world for a nonprofit and follow through, become a non-501c3, think it's a wonderful thing. Doesn't necessarily mean that the corporations out there are going to love it. You've got to understand that they are looking for opportunities that make themselves look better. Does that make sense? They're looking for ways to be better corporate citizen. You might have the best program in the world, but they're looking at it from a different perspective. Again, not approaching this facetiously. This is the real world. They're going to make decisions based on where they want to be. And if your nonprofit or wannabe nonprofit fits within their needs, then they'll start, then you become more attractive to them. It's a different thought process. There's nothing wrong with pursuing corporate funding. I know a lot of organizations go to Walmart. Walmart is very business friendly, very people friendly. But we're talking, a couple of $100 here, a couple $100 there, maybe some cases of water, things like that. Small, if you're talking big bucks, you're going to Walmart corporate or JP Morgan corporate in New York City or GE Foundation, the big players in the big league. Then you've got to understand where they're coming from and their thought process. I hope that makes sense. Different thought process of how to understand. So here's what we need as grant writers, or program managers or nonprofits that are looking for fundraising. We need to have some thick skin and to understand how these organizations thinks and what they would possibly be attracted to. Again, you could have the best program in the world, best nonprofit, wonderful philanthropic idea. Everyone loves you because you're doing these wonderful things, but it doesn't mean you're going to be attracted to the corporate community. Not being negative here, I'm trying to be real, that you just need to understand their thought process. Okay, so that's foundation. We're on the private side still. That's foundation. That's corporate entities, secondly. And lastly, I want to talk about native-centric community foundations. This is the one I really want to push in front of you. If you're representing a tribal entity, tribally determined whatever, housing authority or, a nonprofit for any tribally related, or any organization basically that has a tribal affiliation. These, particularly this first one you see, I would strongly recommend that you reach out to these people ASAP. The Shakopee Sioux, I don't know how to pronounce the second word, but Sioux community has donated $29 million just in 2022 to other Indian tribes, charitable organizations, and schools. Do you need a 501c3? Yes, you need to have it. So hold the thought on this, but put it on your short list. There's their website and their email address. I know they recently changed their website. You want to go to it, and let's see if that QR code takes you to the new site. I was just on it the other day, and it's pretty spectacular. Let's see, Shakopee. Oh yeah, okay, there it is. It's the new one. If you're doing what I'm doing, I scanned the QR code. It took welcome to Shakopee. I'm not sure how to say it. Sioux community. And let's see. Okay, touched on the 3 lines on the top right, taking me to charitable giving, donations and grants. If you're following on your phone, you can go to the section on their website called donation and grants. And there it is. There's all the types of funding available. Non-cash was the first one. Second one is donations. Third one is grants. And then below that, in the middle of the document, the type of request: cultural, economic, education, environmental, event, general, health, holiday support. That's a new one to me, holiday support. I don't know what that means. Okay, then underneath that, types of requests that will not be considered. That's good to know. Good to know what they don't want you to submit. Helpful tips. This is great. And then some PDFs, creating an account, creating a profile, basically create an account. There's they've got an application process. It walks you right through it. This is wonderful that they've really improved on this. So as nonprofits, as tribal related nonprofits or want to be nonprofits, I can't recommend enough going to Shakopee and checking them out. And that might be, in my opinion, your first stop. Definitely include community funding in general, but native-centric community opportunities. This one, the Shakopee, also First Nations Owista. There's another QR code, and there's their website, firstnations.org. Also very native-centric philanthropic. They even have a dedicated area circled in yellow there. It says philanthropic services. That's grants. So there's your second one. That is native-centric community. And I think I'm going to leave you with this one. I think this is the third one and last one I'm going to talk about for native-centric community. And that's the potlatchfund.org. That QR code should take you there. Pacific Northwest. That's all I know about Potlatch at this point. That doesn't mean you're not eligible. It just means that's where they're located. And you can figure they'll probably have a focus of tribes in the Pacific Northwest, but not 100%. So, it all depends on the need. It all depends on how you present yourself, right? I would strongly recommend, if any of these are of interest to you, contact the Native Learning Center, contact Owista, send her an email, or Brooke, or me, and I will redirect you to the Native Learning Center and take a grant writing course, where we can really get into how to approach all of these entities, and more importantly, how to put together a successful grant narrative. I talk about that in detail. I had the pleasure to have been introduced to Alaska has the Rasmussen Foundation of National Bank of Alaska. Everyone there is welcome. And yeah, that's been my experience too, working with these native-centric community foundations. They'll bend over backwards. They want native organizations, native nonprofits to approach them because it makes their portfolio look good, right? Especially this group. of Native-centric community foundation groups. So it behooves you to reach out to these groups. Again, these three, I know there's more, but those three, the Shakopees, the First Nations, and then the Potlatch Fund. Go to their websites, check it out, reach out to them if you feel comfortable with it. Use them as your starting point would be my strong recommendation for your fundraising. And then look at those other things, the other corporate funding sources, the corporate entities and the foundations that we talked about, especially the ones I have on the list that have a native focus. Let's go back. So this would be your number one approach, right? Native-centric community foundations. Your number two, not corporate, but number two would be these guys. Your foundations that have a native-centric focus. So there's one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 right off the bat. They would be my number two go to in my list of fundraising targets. Number three would be the corporate entities that have a native centric focus to them, right? Because they obviously do. And then number four would be federal grant opportunities, right? That would be my hierarchy of outside entities to pursue. That's four, right? Five, let's go on. Let's go beyond this. Let's talk about other things that you could do outside of communities, foundations, and corporate entities. What else? You could start generating potentially revenue streams through the sale of products and services. That would be number five. You got to give that some thought. What kind of service, what kind of product could you manufacture or could you coordinate? As long as the product and services are in line with your mission, you're okay. Keep that in mind. You sell a product, it has to be related to your mission. Otherwise, the auditors are going to kill you. They are going to treat you like a corporate entity and not as a nonprofit. Always, always, always keep your products that you're going to sell or potential to sell and your services in sync with your mission. Otherwise, you run into what's called UBIT, unrelated business income tax, where the auditors come in, they look at the product, they look at the service, and they say the words you never want to hear. These don't line up with your mission. So we are going to recommend that your tax burden be as a corporate entity, as a for-profit, instead of a nonprofit, which is the whole idea of becoming a nonprofit, lessening your tax burden, right? Got to think through that. Okay, so number five would be the selling of products and services, right? Is there a number six? Perhaps. A non-traditional revenue stream, and I don't have one off the top of my head that yell at you. That would be up to you because you're all unique. You'd want to have something, perhaps. This is where perhaps we fall back on, I was kidding before when I said bake sales and heavy equipment rodeos and things like that. I worked for a nonprofit for years and years and years before coming to the Native Learning Center. And it was an association. And it was a nonprofit, of course, well established, and they catered to the construction industry, to the non-union side of the equation. And one of the things they do, I wasn't kidding when I said a heavy equipment rodeo. They literally did. They brought the guys in, women too, and they would do rodeo using bulldozers and all kinds of different equipment. And they would show off the skills of these heavy equipment operators, which was incredible. Some of these guys could pick up a feather off the ground with a front end loader. Just amazing. But anyway, that was their big fun. And then they would also sell used equipment. It was a huge fundraiser for that. So that's number six, is coming up with unique fundraising ideas that are unique to your organization. We're stepping up. The first five or the first four are going to be the outside organizations, as I mentioned, corporate, community, federal grants, all that kind of stuff. The fifth is going to be products and services. And the 6 are going to be your unique ideas of creating what I call non-traditional revenue streams. You know, the bake sale on steroids, basically. What is your idea? This is the time to think about it, folks. This is the time to think through these kind of things, because when we come together next week and talk about the IRS process, you will see that they are going to ask you, what is your fundraising plan? And you've got to say more than we're going to raise money, or the tribe's going to give us a little bit here and a little bit there. No, God, no. You've got to have a plan, and you've got, as I would say, a multimedia approach. Now, if you can assign dollars to it, all the better. But be careful with that. I would just paint the picture of these areas you're going to pursue, the main areas, the 4, 5, or 6 that we talked about, but don't get into the actual dollar amounts. And you'll see why much more clearly next week when I talk about dollar thresholds that qualify you or disqualify you for filling the short form or the long form. We want to go for the short form, of course. All right. So what do we have left to talk about here in the remaining 25 minutes? Soliciting donations. I talked about that. You really can't do it successfully until you've got the 501c3. I mean, you can talk about it, but you really have no tax exemption benefits for yourself or to be able to give to donors to sell this. So fundraising consideration, charitable contribution. We're getting towards the end of the presentation here, so I just want to touch on a couple things that are important. You can go, there is that QR code, as it says, takes you to a site, an IRS site, on charitable contributions for the individual and qualified organizations. It's a publication put out. In fact, I'm going to do it now so I can talk a little more authoritatively on it instead of trying to do it by memory. Okay, yeah, charitable contributions. Organizations that qualify to receive deductible contributions, types of organizations. You can read through it. The gist of it is, you need to have the 501c3 to really gain the benefit on your end of the contributions, to be able to sell it to the contributor as a tax exemption type of thing. You really can't promise that to your donors, whether they're real or targeted, perceived. You really can't do that until you achieve the 501c3 determination. Non-deductible is charitable contributions, money given to social and sports club, labor unions, chambers of commerce, foreign organizations, of course, groups that run for personal profit. That would be a for-profit organization. Groups that lobby, there's that lobby thing, especially if you're pursuing federal funds. Groups that lobby for law and legislative changes, you can't use federal funds for that. Basically, just use that as a general rule, unless you want to become a PAC. And I don't see that happening with a lot of tribal organizations becoming a political action committee. No. And you wouldn't be able to, the IRS classification for that is not 501c3 anyway. We'll go over that next week when we go through that process of determining what kind of a 501c3 you're going to be. IRS has a series of questions. We'll walk through them one at a time to determine, to make sure you're not a church, you're not a synagogue or a place of worship, you're not a hospital, you're not an institution of higher learning, et cetera, et cetera. You're not a healthcare organization. We'll go through that process. Same thing here to make sure that you're not a PAC, because that's a different classification. You're not a homeowners association or a political group of any kind. You have to stay away from that. Or an individual. Individuals cannot apply for 501c3 status. That's an organizational type of thing, right? Okay. All right. Before I go off of this, I want to, because we're at the end of this presentation, unless you have questions or concerns, money given to the nonprofit, or you're not a nonprofit yet, right? money given to nonprofit organizations as well as churches, synagogues, temples, mosques, places of worship, other religious faith-based. IRS refers to them as faith-based organizations. Okay, it's all its own classification. Federal deductible is charitable contributions. Yes, that churches and faith-based organizations are set up. They can receive all kinds of donations. Federal, state, local governments can as well. Nonprofit schools and hospitals also fall into that. Salvation Army, all those social service organizations do. Veterans group, for the most part, do. And what we'll do next week is we'll go through that process to make sure you are moving towards the 501c3. As we're going through it, and you say to yourself next week, we come across something and you say, that's really where we want to go. We want to become not a faith-based organization. Let's say you want to become more in the health arena. You want to become an HMO or something like that. Then we're not talking 501c3 anymore. You're talking about a different class. That's the process we'll go through, because there's all kinds of different entities that are eligible for nonprofit, but they're not 501c3 classifications. And that's what we'll do next week. Yeah, Buffalo Bills Moral Support Fan Club. I love that. Is that a charitable nonprofit? 501c3? Just curious. That's great. Okay. Any other? I've never heard of it. I mean, I love the Buffalo Bills. No, for the coach. Yeah. Oh, okay. You're talking not financially, but spiritually, right? And I get you. All right. One thing I do want to mention when it comes to fundraising, when it comes to charitable contributions, we're getting all into the kind of the legal part of it, the operational part of it. But I want to fall back a little bit on what we were talking about last week. I mentioned when it comes to your leadership, when it comes to whether you call them a board of directors or board of commissioners, we know that you got to have that for a nonprofit. We also know that the IRS is going to be emphasizing, among other things, they're going to be emphasizing from the get-go how, are you more than just a hobby? Are you going, and that's really, it's the same question on the for-profit side that accountants and the IRS has if you want to become like a limited liability company, which is on, for example, on the private side, right? More than a sole source, more than a partnership, you want to be an LLC. Just as the name implies, a limited liability company means you're incorporated. And of course, one of the questions from the IRS is, are you a hobby, or are you really moving towards becoming a legitimate business, generating revenue more than a couple bucks here and a couple bucks there, which is a hobby, which they determine as a hobby. Are you kind of worthy of moving to the next level? And that's really what we're doing here next week when we go through the series of questions. They're going to be asking you, trying to narrow down the subtleties of the 501c classification. First of all, to make sure you are a 501c3, that you're not going to be a healthcare organization, you're not going to be an HMO, you're not going to be a church, faith-based organization, or an institution of higher learning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You really are going to be a 501c candidate, and they narrow that down through the series of questions. Also, there's going to be financial related questions. How much money do you have in the bank? How much money do you think you're going to earn over the next 3 years looking forward? How much do you have in the way of assets currently and looking to the future, and different threshold benchmarks of what you are? That's why I was saying before, when it comes to your fundraising plan, don't talk dollars, talk more strategic plan. This is what we plan to do. This is where we plan to go. These are the kind of things we're going to pursue, not necessarily the dollar amount. Stay away from the dollar amount. I think that'll become real clear when we go in the next week and you can see the IRS thresholds for dollar amount. The dollar amount thresholds are the way that they determine if you're going to fill out the short form, which is our goal, or the monster long form, which is what we don't want to do. So bear with me. when I say be careful of how you promote the earnings, the actual dollar amounts, if you have that potential. And just when it comes to fundraising, just talk about the process, not the actual results, at least from a dollar perspective. And the thing I wanted to talk about with the Board of Commissioners, every Board of Commissioners, aka Board of Directors, needs to know that one of their main responsibilities is to make sure that the nonprofit, want to be nonprofit or actual nonprofit, has the resources, has the income, and has the fundraising potential to move forward. That's why IRS is going to want to know who your board of directors are and what your fundraising plan is. Are you a hobby, or have you gone through the motions of incorporating, getting an EIN number, selecting your board of directors, having a board of director meeting with minutes, having bylaws that are written, and what your fundraising plan is. So where do board members come in play in this? Every day. Every board member, every board of commissioner is responsible in one way or another in the fundraising plan. They have to be involved in the fundraising process. They are obligated as board members. So when a potential board member says to you, I don't feel comfortable talking to people about giving contributions to this organization or to what we hope to be this nonprofit organization, that should be a red flag, because every board member, to some way, shape, or form, to some extent, needs to be willing to participate in the fundraising process, whether it's asking for donations, talking to potential donors, perhaps talking to legislators, or the common person, tribal leadership, whomever. They need to be able to represent the organization. That's critical information. Yeah, that's a critical part of being a board member, is playing a part in the fundraising. They cannot segregate themselves from the financial responsibility, and fundraising is a big part. The IRS is very concerned about it. Are you a hobby, or are you a real, as my twin boys like to say, are you a real boy? Yeah, this is what you want to prove. And then you do that by providing this information. We're incorporated. We've got articles that are approved by the state. We've got bylaws that we've approved internally. We've got an EIN number. We have a fundraising plan. We can send all that to you in writing if you wish it. And I think they might ask you for it. So do yourself a favor, prepare it now. All right, I'm done. But I want to tell you that next week, we're bringing this all together. Please join me next week, because I don't have it here. And before I turn it over to Elisa to close out, I just want to tell you next week, it's all coming together. We're going to talk about the actual process of applying for the 501c. We're going to walk through the IRS questionnaire. It's literally called that. It's called the 501c3 IRS 501c3 application questionnaire. And we want to be able to answer yes, or is it no? We want to be able to answer no to all the questions on there. Are you a church? No. Are you an HMO? No. Are you an institution of higher learning? No. And so on and so on. 26 questions. We'll walk through it to help set you up for, and the financial information that I talked about. This is critically important, because this puts this session next Tuesday, puts everything together, right? Brings everything together. And we'll talk about all the parameters needed. I'll show you what the application looks like. We'll walk through it to make it as painless as possible, and hopefully set you up for success, that you'll have all your ducks in a row so that you can actually pursue this and get it done within a reasonable amount of time, and have a legitimate 501c3 charitable organization up and running within a reasonable period of time. That's what we want to do. That's how we want to close out next week. Today, I just want to close out by saying thank you for joining me for the very, very important section on funding generation, fundraising. We hear the phrase fundraising, and we think it's a very nebulous term. It's revenue generation is what it really is, using IRS terminology. Revenue generation. Traditional and non-traditional revenue streams. What are they? How are we going to get there? Now, hopefully, you have a plan, or at least an idea of how to move in that direction. Okay, that's what we want to do. So I'm going to turn it back over to Alisa. We're a few minutes early, like 10 or 11. Unless you have questions, I'll hang here for a few minutes as she closes to see if you have any questions. If it needs verbal, I'll jump in. Otherwise, I'll answer in the chat box. If not, if there's no questions, thank you for being here. Hope to see you next week.
Thank you so much, Vince. You did an incredible job as always. Greatly appreciate you. Just like Vince said, if you have any questions or concerns or any comments, please go ahead and put them in the chat box and I will go ahead and close out. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and launch today's survey. It is a great big help if you guys could go ahead and fill out the survey. It just lets Vince know what really helped you, what didn't, what you were looking for, if there's anything you would like to see in the future, or if there's anything that you would like to see in part 4 that Vince can include, please go ahead and let us know. Your opinion is very, it means a lot to us. It's very valuable. Our next webinar is going to be August 22nd. It is Fundamentals of Developing a Tribal Nonprofit, Part 4. It will be presented by Vince Franco, founder and owner of Next Venture Consulting, LLC. As always, registration is free, so please don't forget to sign up. It will be at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. Pacific, and 10 a.m. Alaska. You can access this recording and any of our other recordings on our website, www.nativelearningcenter.com. We have a Cathedral Webinars tab featuring a recorded webinar section. You can click on any one of the webinars that we have done for the past 2 years. Feel free to view them and share them with your friends and colleagues. And I will put part 1 and part 2 back in the chat momentarily so you can see those recordings as well. And this part 3 will be posted tomorrow. Please also check out our upcoming events posted on our various social medias. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We even have a podcast titled Hopathanga Native American Podcast, where we discuss more focused topics within the Native American housing and self-determination. You can listen on Simplecast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, as well as view the video recordings with our guests on YouTube. Once again, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We greatly appreciate you and hope to see you for part 4. Thank you again, Vince.